Welcome back to the safe house. Plenty to talk about. Trump is in office and taking action. Not sure I agree with all of the actions he's taking. There's, I think, some telling signs that I'm not sure if I agree or disagree with some of the things that he's talking about. So let's start with the Panama Canal. Now, he's talking about taking back the Panama Canal and that China controls the Panama Canal. And I think this makes absolute sense. Whether I agree with it or not, or with whether anybody agrees with it or not, it is a sign of the times, I think. We've talked about the Ben Gurion Canal, the alternate canal to the Suez Canal, and that this is, I think, why we have been seeing this war in Israel, Gaza, the West Bank. It's strategic. It's a colony. We've talked about all that. Well, if they're jockeying for control of the Suez Canal, it would only make sense that the United States try to control the Panama Canal, the second busiest, second to only the Suez, from the way I understand it. And Greenland, I just learned that just north of Greenland is the potential, again, Northwest Passage, that as the climate has been changing, it has been opening up, and it would be the shortest route from North America to Europe and Asia. Not to mention, Greenland is full of natural resources, oil, minerals, rare earth minerals, evidently. A good portion of the rare earth minerals that are sought after by developing and controlling countries. And of course, the almost comical claim of making Canada a state of the United States. Personally, and Trump's a little bit of a wild card, and he plays that to his advantage. He's a negotiator. Say what you want about Trump, but I think he is definitely a negotiator, and a good negotiator. When you're in a business in a dog eat dog world, friendship is good. You would rather negotiate with a friend than an enemy, but you cannot be soft. And I think that likely he is trying to show the potential to the people he would be negotiating with in Canada that you better talk business, or these are alternative routes I could take. And I don't think that is a far cry in regards to understanding that situation there. And same with Greenland. I will say, I think that he is more serious about making Greenland a United States territory than he is Canada. Another strategic reason for wanting that would be, it is said that it would be vital, it would be a strategic location for early warning signs of missile strikes, early warning equipment for our military. And if you look, if that passage opens up, and it sounds like that is what will happen very soon, and becomes a route to Europe and Asia, I think that controlling that, and with the way Trump talks about America and his, him talking about not being a part of NATO, whether he really wants that, whether that is really his objective or not, he's showing people alternative routes he could take. If you don't want to play hardball, and if you don't want to negotiate deals in favor of the United States, these are alternative paths that we could take. So whether he's really serious about pulling out of NATO or not, which I'm not sure I would be completely against that. I am not for global control under any one entity, any one central power. But it is nature of the beast. And in regards to China and Russia and the United States, unfortunately, I don't think that you can just count on your adversaries. Careful with the word enemy, but your adversaries, people that could be competing for the same thing, for world dominance. You can't really trust that they're not on that path. And in fact, if you look at all these major, players in the world, you have to look at it from a business perspective, because that really truly is what these countries are. It's, the president or prime minister of these countries are like CEOs of businesses. And as much as I would like to think that that is not the case, I don't think you have a correct understanding of the situation if you're not looking at it like that. As far as being able to compete with your competition, your exports, your imports, the value of your dollar, and all of these things, taking the Panama Canal, the Greater Israel Project, and trying to expand the colony of Israel, Greenland, the Northwest Passage, natural resources, these are all indicative of jockeying for position. And we've not talked much about BRICS and the desire for BRICS being Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, along with more than a dozen countries applying to be members of BRICS. They want to issue a currency that will not only rival but beat out the dollar for the world's reserve currency. And I have said before, the United States is not going to allow its currency to be bumped from the top, from being the world's reserve currency, without a fight. And it's going to start with economic sanctions and pressure, with proxy wars, and in my opinion, before the United States allows that happen, it will be another war, potentially another World War, World War III. It's not that I want this. It's not that I desire this, but I think if you look at it and analyze it accurately, this is what we're talking about. Hopefully, it's just, I don't think there's any hopefully about it. It's nature of the beast. It's nature of the beast. When you're in business for yourself, there's only one direction, and that's up. And if you're not trying to put your competitors out of business, you're not going to stay in business for long. I've certainly never been in business to that degree or caliber, but I have been in business in a very competitive dog eat dog world. And if you're not willing to be aggressive, if you're not willing to look at things honestly instead of idealistically, if you're not a realist, you're not in business. And it doesn't matter what I think or desire. This is the world we live in. And if the United States isn't looking, along with Russia and China, if they're not looking to beat out their competitors, they will be beaten out of the business. So, Again, I have a hard time taking serious the Canada being the 51st state, but stranger things have happened, and he's talking about going to war with the drug cartels in Mexico. I will say that out of all of the, I hate to say outrageous, but all of the big claims that Trump has talked about here, Greenland, Canada, Panama Canal, Mexican drug cartels, I'm on board mostly with the Mexican drug cartels. For one, that border, if we're talking about national security and changes on the horizon, the desire for China to be the superpower or for Russia to be the superpower, which of course, remember, Russia is more and bigger nukes than the United States. Russia has a submarine fleet that evidently is it would be wise to be aware of this. And I know that they are, those decision makers, that it is their job to be aware of these things, definitely are aware. But the drugs and the human trafficking that the Mexican drug cartels feed on is a huge problem. This is aside from a superpower jockeying for position or to maintain position, this is a humanitarian issue. I think it's close to 500,000 children that have come into the United States in the last few years are completely unaccounted for. This is mind-boggling to me. The amount of fentanyl that likely comes across that border or under, the amount of narcotics that the drug cartels in Mexico are responsible for is ugly, to say the least. It's has a huge impact on the United. I personally know several people over the last few years that have died from fentanyl. And for those people that don't know that human trafficking and child sex trafficking is a huge problem, it would be nice to think or know that it was not a reality. It would be nice to think that there are people that aren't trying to purchase sex from children in the United States. But the United States is the number one consumer and destination for sex trafficking and sex traffickers. So when Trump talks about using our tier 1 operators, the United States military, to go to war with the cartels, and that's what I believe it would take. This would be war. They're well funded. They're no strangers to violence. They certainly don't have any moral quarrels about it. As much as I don't like to see violence, this would be very different from a war between Israel and Palestinians. These people, the drug cartels of Mexico, are a real and legitimate problem. And I believe that they're interwoven. They are embedded in the Mexican government. I'm not an expert on the topic, but I believe that would be true to say that they have influenced the Mexican government. And I think it's fair to say that there have been plenty of politicians in the United States and government employees that have been tainted by the drug industry as well. Possibly even the human trafficking issue. So I'm curious to see how that develops. You know, I want to see this war in Ukraine end. Trump, that was one of the issues he campaigned on. One of the things that got my attention by Trump. He's talking about cutting the funding off to Ukraine. But I hope that if he's really seriously considering cutting the funding off, that he has an issue or that he has a deal negotiated with Putin to end the war. Because I am not for abandoning Ukraine. In my opinion, the Minsk peace accords that they were in the process between Germany, UK, France, Ukraine, United States, and Russia. People were happy. The people in the east part of Ukraine were going to have their own autonomous region where they could speak their language, teach the children in their schools in Russian, and still be a part of Ukraine. It seems like Putin was happy with this and withdrawing his military. Then the Biden administration came in, and old school Bush era war dogs, Boris Johnson, members of the UK, the Parliament of Britain, put a kibosh on it. And now look at what we have in Ukraine. Thousands and thousands of people died, children dead. You know, Ukraine, there are all kinds of accusations about human trafficking in Ukraine. So I hope that if Trump really has a plan or really plans to cut off funding to the Ukraine war, that he has a deal worked out with Putin to end the war. Because we've done this before. We've gone in, we've armed them to the gills, or armed them to the teeth, had them fight our proxy wars for us, and then packed up shop and just left the locals in a horrible situation with a new enemy. And I'm just going to make a prediction. I listened to Trump dance around the topic while he was campaigning of Israel and Hamas. And I'm not a fan of Hamas. Not a fan of any of the violence that have been inflicted on the Israeli people. You know, I know I've talked about Jewish supremacy in Israel, but really we could leave certain words out. Let's just call them people. Whether they're Palestinian, Israeli, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, these are people that inflict violence on other people. And that's the way it needs to be looked at. We are all equally people with families and loved ones. And that needs to stop. But I'm predicting now that Trump is not going to cut funding to Israel. I believe that he's going to support Israel. And from the standpoint of the United States, if Iran is our enemy, if Egypt is a potential enemy, and that relationship has gone back and forth over the years as well, if we have more enemies in that region than not, it is no excuse for genocide, but it is in the United States and Britain and France and NATO's interest to maintain a certain amount of presence for the reasons like the Suez Canal as a balance to our enemies. They're not my enemies. I'm speaking from the perspective of the United States. If they're going to try to protect this world, the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, if they're going to try to protect their position as the world's foremost superpower, the mightiest navy, I mean, our military is really something else. These are all things that, this is nature of the beast. There again, if you want to play with the big boys, these are just things that come along with that. This is just nature of the beast. And so I think all of these things, the Panama Canal, the Northwest Passage, Greenland, Canada as a state, war with the drug cartels in Mexico is not that simple. There will be a certain element of war with the Mexican government. These are all indicative of what is on the horizon. We've reached a turning point, not just us, but China, Russia, the Arab world, United States. It's go time. It's time for people to start, if they want to contend, if they want to move in the direction of world superpower and world domination, which, I hate to say it, but if you look back at history, this has been the objective for kingdoms and countries and nations for a long time. There again, once you reach a certain level, if you want to play with the big boys, this is the game you're playing. All of these things are indicative of that. And we've reached a turning point where people have to start making decisions, start drawing lines in the sand. And that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing. I think the next year is going to tell us a lot. And this is Trump's second term. I hear talk about Trump trying to get a third term. One president has done that, Roosevelt. And since then, it has been amended. There has been an amendment to the Constitution that doesn't allow it. I personally think that that's, kind of wild stuff. But, hey, stranger things have happened, and everything in this world changes eventually. Sometimes it takes longer for some things than others. I would not be for that. I think that the United States Constitution is a wonderful document, article. But I think this administration, yes, the next year or two, but the next 4 years is going to tell us a lot about what's going to happen in this world. One thing I worry about is that Trump has seen all kinds of backlash as president, the 4 years after his first term, and he has had people really fight for him. I mean, he swept this election. I mean, the Republicans in general swept this election. And he has really created some loyalists, people that are very, very loyal to Trump and have fought tooth and nail. I mean, since January 6th, all of these things, Antifa's chaos in the streets. He has loyalists. It's a word I can't say right now. And what I worry about is if he does start to go too far, people won't have the humility to say, okay, Trump, we've supported you, but you're going too far. I worry that people won't stop their support for somebody, that they are too loyal to him. And that's just, in my opinion, that's not what politicians are. In a sense, we use them and then we kick them aside. They're not kings. They don't deserve unwavered support. As long as they're doing what we want them to do because they are of service to us, then they get our support. But when they exceed that, or they stop doing what we want, that's when you kick them aside. There should not be this deep loyalty. But we will see what happens. I really think that the next year or two is going to tell us a lot about the next decade. So, like, subscribe, comment below, Hit the notification bell. Until next time.